Yeah, we burned through a shoe in a session.
Okay.
Yeah,
Of course. So you're doing this race.
Yeah, going to my 7th World Cup. It's an IDF race, the International Downhill Federation.
It's time to run the Barracuda! Yeah! Everybody do it now! Do what, baby? Come on and do the Barracuda!
Hey, skate. G'day, viewers. This episode of the Gold Coast vs. Drew Crack podcast show is brought to you by Koala Karma, the chill out drink. Just sit back, relax, crack a little can of Karma Koala, and just start bombing the biggest hill in your suburb on a skateboard, on a piece of wood, with a couple of wheels on it. Just have a go. Just have a real go, just like you know you should if you were born in Logan. No, hey, how are you? Good? Thanks for tuning in once again. I don't want to sound too cocky, but I have had a pretty good fun episode up with Jeremy Rodgers from Early Skateboards, who is taking on a big downhill World Cup in the following weekend. He just got the ticket, he just got a sponsor, and I want to cheer this lad on. Anyway, listening to this episode, it's very interesting to hear about guys who can do up to 100 Ks on a piece of wood going down a hill in places like Bathurst, worldwide. He's been everywhere. So, local Gold Coast boy, are you there, Jeremy Rodgers? And look who rolled in. Jeremy Rodgers, how are you, mate?
Good. Always good.
Yeah? Are you always good?
Yeah, try to be.
How old are you then?
Just turned 40.
Just turned 40.
Yeah.
I beat you. I'm 43.
Nice.
But the difference between you and me, you ride really fast on a skateboard.
Yeah, it's one of the boards I tend to have fun on.
Right.
I like all boards, but yeah, skateboarding has tickled my fancy in a big way. So.
Yeah. When did you get your first board?
I first got a longboard when I was travelling overseas. I went through San Diego and met the Sector 9 boys and bought a couple of boards there, and then came back to the Gold Coast, and after a snow season we started to want to go down hills fast, so we started making our own based on the standard, pintails of the day, and developed from there.
Right, I mean, like your first skateboard, like your...
Oh, short boards are...
Like, when was your first one passed to you and you had it and you got hooked on the idea of...
Well, I started street skating, I suppose, around 14, 15, just when I started surfing, really. Mm-hmm. Grew up with rugby, so...
on the Gold Coast?
No, Brisbane.
Oh, yeah? Where? I went to Rochester High School. Where'd you go?
Oh, I was just around the corner.
Yeah.
I was at John Paul.
Dead set.
Yeah.
Okay.
World.
Yeah, it really is.
I went to Springwood Road State School.
I lived on Springwood Road my whole life.
Wow, we're just
there you go.
off
Knuckles.
Donner Avenue.
Under, mate.
Yeah.
I used to get my combi. Donner Avenue had those real flat, long, what do you call them? Slow down bumps?
Speed humps.
The real long, flat tabletops.
There was 3.
Mate, I had this combi, mate and I, Grant Fitzpatrick, we'd drive down Donner Ave on the downhill section and just jump, because the thing has an engine in the back, the front would just bounce off the ground the whole way, boom, 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 until I hit the next one. Used to do it all the time until this neighbour came running out with a pitchfork, like, rah!
Well, you'd know Minerva.
Yep.
Minerva Street, that's a big steep hill. And,
yes.
We sort of grew up. I was the next road to that, so Narelle Crescent.
Yep. I can't believe you're telling me this.
Yeah,
mate.
Crazy.
So you would have gone to Underwood Park Bowl quite a bit?
Yeah, I played rugby up there.
Yep.
And rode the BMX track and so forth. But went back to Underwood Park after I started skating, I suppose.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was one of those dudes, man, that started skating, but I could never, in that Underwood Park half pipe, I could only do turns. I never I don't know. You know what I mean? I
got
could
to the
never.
coping.
Yeah, could never drop in off the top bit.
Skateboarding is one of the most intimidating, board sports. You go through them all. Surfing, you got water. It's not as intimidating. Street skating, I found hard. That's probably why I was never really super proficient in it to do handrails and so forth. So, going fast down hills was easier.
Right. Yeah, it's like everyone's got their thing.
Yeah.
And some of those trick guys just look at you and like, how do you go so fast? Like, don't you get frightened? But you're like, man, you're 3 meters in the air, dropping into half pipes in the middle of nowhere,
Yeah,
funny?
everyone's different perspective on what's crazy and what's not. But we came back from the snow. That's where it sort of developed. And, being at the top of the hill with a bunch of your mates and snowboarding, you'd race to the bottom of the hill, and we came back and thought, wow, we can do this here. So then we pursued that a little bit more and started to get into the equipment, I suppose. But we're pretty basic back when we started. Just bits of plywood, cut them out in a pintail, and put some wider trucks on it. 215 independents.
Okay.
We're pretty much the standard, and then we researched a little bit more, and there was reverse kingpin trucks, and Randall were bringing out the ones that people were racing on, like Biker Sherlock. Australia had the Planet X back in late 1990s, and we had some of the world's gnarliest races here in Brisbane and the Gold Coast, Mount Cootha, Pullenvale, and that's when we thought, oh, wow, we can do that. So we got it to the stage where we were confident we could enter, and then the rug got pulled underneath, and there was no more events.
Why?
Around that early 2000s is when the insurance, public liability insurance and everything became really...
After 9/11, I remember we were racing sprint cars. It was the same thing. The insurance went nuts for all the speedways, everyone. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so similar. They just didn't do the downhill aspect to the X Games and whatnot, and it sort of went on the back burner. But then in 2003, there was a European World Cup circuit. One of the boys sold all his stuff and went travelling, and then it sort of showed us that, hey, what we were doing over here was competitive at a world level. So
okay, if one of us can do it,
yeah. And then in Australia, it was a hard slog. We formed the Australian Skateboard Racing Association. It's called ASRA, and the initial phase of ASRA was just slalom racing. So, the old school cones down the road, and you manoeuvre through the cones. And in 2006, there was a few races. In around 2004, we held the Nationals at Bangalow, in conjunction with the Bangalow Billy Cart Derby.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah, so
I've been there a couple of times, yeah.
We got the opportunity to do a demo. They asked us back, and then the next year we thought, rolling down Bangalow Hill isn't really cool.
Yes, right,
from an aspect of,
for you guys,
showing it.
From
so,
Conrod straight in Bathurst.
Yeah,
Bangalow is a bit of a breeze, eh?
It was an opportunity to showcase, but we thought we can do something cool here and have a giant slalom race down there, and that was sort of where a crew from Sydney came up, and that's when ASRA sort of started to form, and that aspect of the skateboarding community started to, rear and was born.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, what is that then? Is it the, when you're racing, obviously it'd be a small crew, would it not? Like, you'd be seen in the skating community there. You'd be pretty much outsiders, like probably nutters to half the kids that are hanging around the Tugan skate. You know what I mean? I
don't think we
a
even
different crew.
Yeah, I don't think we even are a thought amongst there. It's just not a process that they think exists or they don't care about or anything. So, yeah, I don't think it even registers at it exists or whatever. So we just went about things. Each time, so in 2008 there was the Conehead Cup Series, which was the slalom national series, and we'd go down to Sydney. We went down 5 times that year. There was the Canberra races, there was the Central Coast races, Sydney races, and there was a national series basically. But each time we'd go down, we'd take all our downhill stuff. And one guy, Fitzy, would come pick us up, and we'd go downhilling for the weekend, and then go and do a slalom race, and then everything outside of that slalom race we'd go searching the hills. Right. And that's where we basically uncovered an amazing array of hills, mountains basically. So that was the first time we did Mount Kira, and it was the first time I think anyone had skated Mount Kira fast. And it's probably a 3K stretch of road with over 15 turns, and we're doing 70, 80 Ks down it, so it's gnarly.
See, to people like me, when, skateboards, grew up with them. But when I've never owned a longboard. How long's your longboard there?
That one's probably 38 inches.
Right, and how much does it weigh? About something, I don't know, like a couple of kilos?
4.5 kilos, I think.
It's not exactly heavy, but to me, when I look at those things, I don't even know how you turn them.
Mm.
So I guess everyone listening to this who thinking, how do you go to the top of a hill and look down and go, yeah, this is going to be a great ride, but I can't work out how you stop, you know what I'm saying? You showed me outside, but all I'm sure everyone thinks about you guys is that you can't stop. Like, there's no way. When you're on a skateboard, you can't stop.
Yeah, well, that's what we sort of teach people that aren't familiar with it, that are interested, that you have to be confident that you can roll to a stop. You know, get that mindset that if you're at the top of the hill, your goal is to get to the bottom. You don't want to get halfway and think, oh, I'm going too fast, let's jump off to the side. That's not an option. The boards are stable. They will get you there. You just got to be confident enough to stay on the board. So, you know, everyone's thought process around longboarding and so forth comes from the pintails and the mini cruisers and the flex decks and so forth. That is one aspect to longboarding. Once you start going faster, you need a stiff board, you need tight trucks. You know, everyone goes, you must get speed wobbles. That's the biggest, query around it. Yeah. Why don't you get speed wobbles? The trucks are engineered not to get speed wobbles now, so we're seeing races overseas that they're going 120 Ks of Brazilian races. They're bombing it, over 100 Ks. So you have faith in your equipment, you get comfortable. Some people love that loose truck feel, but it's just whatever you're comfortable riding and whatever you're confident you can get to the bottom of the hill safely on is what your chosen board will look and feel like.
So speed wobbles when the trucks are too loose, and crazy feeling, isn't it? I haven't done that for a long time, but
death wobbles.
Yeah, death wobbles. It's like this thing under me has no control all of a sudden. Yeah,
it's going to kick you off, and you see it with all the movies where the short boarders are bombing hills and they get speed wobbles and eat the asphalt basically and skin themselves. So. Yeah.
What about rocks? I'm going to ask you with all the dummy questions, like I said I would. I just think I've seen it. I saw the videos of Bathurst, which I've raced at. I did the 2-hour race and a Formula Ford race at Bathurst, so I know. The dipper, I crashed it in the dipper, so I know exactly, just like all you guys actually did too. That's a lot of the video footage was coming down from Skyline onto Conrod Straight, and I know how steep that is and how fast it is. The
videos don't give it
of course not
enough, credibility of how steep it is. The first time we went, we got asked basically after the Conehead Cup Series, they got interested in downhill and they said, hey, can we race? And we said, yeah, get a track and let's test it out. They got Bathurst. So they said, come down, ride the hill, see what we can do. So 5 of us went down and tested the hill. And the time we were walking up there is like what have we got ourselves into?